Hey, James, we have some good questions this week. I want to start off with Howard from Santa Fe, New Mexico, who asked the question a lot of people are asking: why did Trump outperform the polls? He posits, was it having a stronger ground game and Biden's reluctance to travel as much as he would have if the pandemic wasn't going on?
Yes, all of that is true. But I think what happened was, the anti-police, the socialism, the everything that they did, I think it broke through at the end. And we wanted to say the Iowa poll was an outlier and anything. I think it, to Ann Seltzer's credit, when we look back, I'll say that she picked something up, and this is the second time that it's kind of broken that way. And I think there is something fundamentally wrong with Democratic messaging. And I think we got it right in 2018. I think Biden, for his part, got it mostly right in 2020. But people, for some reason, just kind of backed off at the end.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that was the prime thing. The lack of a ground game may have hurt a little bit in places like Eastern North Carolina, but you are much more on target. And on the polling, I mean, Nate Cohn had a big piece about it this morning in the Times. I wish he would have credited Ann Seltzer, because as you say, I was a little skeptical at that poll, and I should have learned. She worked with me for 8 years. Don't be skeptical of Ann Seltzer. She really did. She got it right. Our next question is from Susan from San Diego, who asks, is there any way to outmaneuver McConnell or undermine her words, although I agree, malignant control? Is there anything that could prevent McConnell from just sitting on legislation? Susan, that is such a good question. And the only answer I can give is two, as in 2 seats in Georgia. The way the Senate rules work, the majority leader has enormous power over the calendar, and certainly McConnell is going to exercise that. James points out that he needs some things, so occasionally he might relent, but he's going to be a nightmare unless those 2 seats are picked up in Georgia.
Yeah, we got to pick up the 2 seats in Georgia, and remember, we go to post again in 2 years, so we might have a tough 2 years, but could have an easier time the next 2. I mean, there's a lot of politics left to play, and a 51, 52, 48 margin is you still can do it, but he's going to have to be he has a good wrangler to keep everybody on board. He can't lose much. So, we'll see. And there are going to be things that they're going to need from Biden. It's not like there's nothing that they're going to want. And hopefully Biden will have the statecraft and way to maneuver through this and get some things done. But it is discouraging. I don't want to kid anybody here. This was a very, very discouraging thing that we did not win the Senate. It's upsetting.
James, Paul from Racine, Wisconsin, and you know the answer to this because you've dealt with them. What happens to these disaffected Republicans after the election?
Well, first of all, they're not going back to the Republican Party. There was some hope that Trumpism would be defeated. That was the grand hope. Well, no such thing happened. Don Jr. and Kellyanne Guilford are going to run the Republican National Committee, of which, of course, they'll just use it as a grift. They'll just make money on it. They're raising money for the recount, and the fine print says that the money doesn't even go to the recount. All right, they're going to keep stealing with both hands. Now, what you don't know, and I can't emphasize this enough, what happens when the very real possibility, the very real possibility that he's indicted by the Manhattan DA or the New York Attorney General. What effect does that have? How convincing is that case? What does that cause in the United States? This is a very, very real proposition. This investigation is very, very real. And
it's not a federal investigation, so he can't pardon himself. He's going to pardon everybody and himself if he can. But he has no jurisdiction over that. And just from what we know of the case, when you just look at what the New York Times has published on his tax returns, man, I'd hate to be in his shoes in that case.
And also the investigating that foundation, which was a giant grift. And remember, Steve Bannon is indicted. He's in serious legal jeopardy. Brad Parcell is being investigated. There's only one person that they can turn on to stay out of jail.
Right.
There's only one. They got, and he's got to testify in that E. Jane Carroll suit. He's got $400 million. I will talk to Tom and Ed about this. The Shane Harris story in the Washington Post with like 6 national security people on the record by the name. All right, by name.
Okay, let's go. Let me go. We're our Sydney, Australia fan club has written in. This is Gerald, who said, should Democrats be concerned at their apparent inability to appeal much better to working class Americans, white working class, particularly in rural America? Look, James, you were engaged in an effort that certainly made some progress, but not enough. Just overall, the white working class, rural America went almost as strongly for Trump as he did before. There's a lot of work that Democrats have to do there. You go to messaging, and I'm looking at places like North Carolina and Georgia. There's nobody who would be more helped by Medicaid expansion than some of those white working class citizens, and they all voted for Trump. Yeah. Well, these were really good questions. Please keep them coming. We'll try to get to even more next week. And I want to thank you all for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. Remember, you email your questions to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Thanks for subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. And please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week, as I think this ongoing saga will still be a lot to talk about with War Room planning for 2021. Thank you.